Hello, everybody. Welcome to Profiling Evil by Mike King. I'm here with my good friend Chris McDonough, and today we have a special guest with us again, someone hopefully you're becoming very familiar with, Lauren Scharf of FOX21 News. Lauren, how are you today?
Good. How are you guys?
We're doing well.
Good.
Thank you, Chris. How you doing?
I'm doing good. Thanks, Mike. Great seeing you, Lauren. Hi.
Hey.
So, it's really interesting, Lauren. I want to bring up a little screen here to show you what we're talking about. We're going to continue the discussion on Suzanne Morphew. And one of the things that is so intriguing about this that Chris and I have been really excited about is the fact that this is going to be a really high pressure week, in our opinion. And something that as profilers and criminal behavior investigators, we really look forward to, and we want to get a sense from you of some things. But I'm going to just tee it up with this slide right off the bat. And Chris, why is this so important this week?
So this is a very, very stressful week for Barry. We have his anniversary coming up August 5th. And Mike and I know that this will build that stress. So we're excited to have you on this morning. And Mike, we can talk a little bit deeper into what we mean by that as we go along here.
Yeah, that'd be great. So Lauren, it's been a week. You broke some really great things last week. Your two-part series last week on FOX21, I think, was really well received. We saw so much action happening in the community and in the true crime community, talking about the things that you shared last week. We just wanted to revisit with you some of those things that you could share then, and hopefully you'll give us some new nuggets today. What's been going on?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people had some follow-up questions when it comes to the neighbor that I spoke with, Mary Branson. And before, I even did the interview with her, I asked her multiple times the same question, but in different ways, to see if what she was telling me would waver at all, or if things that she was saying would change a little bit. And her sons were right there, and everything that she had told me, it never changed. And so I thought that was very interesting. I thought that she never called investigators. They're the ones that they were next door and they were walking around the property, and they came to them and asked them, hey, did you hear anything? Did you see anything out of the ordinary around Mother's Day weekend? And that's when she told them what she had heard that night. So
yeah, and what she heard was heavy equipment, right? She heard what she thought was heavy equipment, and we don't know if she's theorized and added something over time, because that's one of the challenges with eyewitness testimony, is it can be influenced. But that was pretty raw stuff she was telling me, wasn't it?
Yeah, and she had told me, because that property had been it was a work in progress, obviously. So she had heard that noise previously. And so she kind of said that it was the exact same noise that she had heard, during the day and things like that. But by the time she got up and went out the door, when she opened the door, she said it stopped, and she didn't investigate it further. And she said she wishes she had. A lot of people are like, no, for your own safety, I'm glad you didn't. But I mean, take it as it is. I don't, there's some people online that are trying to discredit her. And I don't think, it's her own words. She heard what she heard, and she had hard of hearing. For her to, and her sons were like, for her to get out of bed because of something that she hears, that's very strange, because we have to yell at her sometimes for her to get our attention, or for her to hear our attention and get her to answer our questions and things like that. And so for her to get out of bed and hear something, that's pretty big.
That, Chris, that's interesting to me, because when we think about the 5 forms of evidence and the fact that eyewitness is such a critical one, and yet can be so filled with challenge, it isn't until we start to add the other kinds of evidence, like forensic evidence that might be recovered, or or circumstantial evidence and other things. Why is this so important? Just even a little nugget like this, and is it possible that it was worthless?
Yeah, no, great question, Mike. And I think the importance in this particular case, it's kind of like, the corner of a puzzle, right? That one corner that we all start looking for. This could be a linchpin to the rest of the flow here. So hearing something at, what time was it in the morning, Lauren?
Well, she said it was 11:30, but she couldn't remember which day, which night it was. That was something she wasn't certain about, but she knows for sure it was Mother's Day weekend. And she said it was around 11:30 at night. And she thought that was such a strange time for something to be happening at a construction site. So.
Interesting. So it's interesting that, and this is where we go back to, kind of what Mike and I have been talking about. If you can figure out when that foundation was poured, and if this information is before that foundation, you may be onto something here.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm still looking into that. There's a lot of things that I'm looking into, but yeah, that would be very interesting to find out.
Yeah, so the piece to that would be to go, there's a box out, like we talked about, in front of the construction site. In order for that concrete to be poured, an inspector had to sign off. Mm-hmm. So we would want to know when that date was.
Yeah, they did have almost like a bulletin board with all these papers, and I wish I would have taken a picture of it.
Okay.
Yeah, but they did have a lot of paperwork up there. So.
Well, maybe somebody can do that for you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And we'll get one of the viewers on this thing to do some research, maybe.
Yeah.
So what else is going on, Lauren?
So, I also, when I was out in Salida, I actually, went to the Morphew property. I knocked on their door. I tried to speak with Barry. I left a couple of notes just to say, I'm thinking about you. I'm doing a story. I would love to get even a statement from you guys in regards to Suzanne. And I left 2 notes at the house for my contact information, and also with one of his friends as well. So I still haven't heard back from the Morphews. I would love to hear a comment. I know that, I can't imagine what they've been through these last couple of months. And I don't want to be too what's the word I'm looking for? Confrontational, but I do want to hear from Barry. I think a lot of people would like to hear from him or the daughters. It would just kind of help us understand Suzanne and her routine and, what type of mother and wife she was. Just firsthand hearing from them would be nice.
Yeah, there's an interesting thing going on. I don't know, Chris, what your thoughts are on this, but I think back to something that was in my state with Elizabeth Smart's abduction. And her father became the focal point. And there may be 100 reasons why. And based on her victimology, it certainly would suggest someone close to Elizabeth. But that family didn't back off on being in the public's face. And this is a really interesting 180-degree approach to things that we saw with Elizabeth or many other cases where someone turns up missing. It might be okay. And why would it be okay if they're not doing it?
Yeah, that's a great point, Mike. I mean, I think this is, you would think natural. I mean, and this all, in this particular concept is, how do people respond under different type of pressures and stresses? And I think this is why this week that you and I have been talking about with the anniversary coming up, he's going to have to be processing a lot of information. And I think this would be an interesting, let's take a look at the victim continuum. I mean, I think, as we go through here, let's, kind of explain to our viewers here, and even with Lauren here as we go through, Mike can go over, some of what we're looking at here and what some of those stressors, how it's going to add to this particular, we think, the case here as a whole.
Yeah, we didn't know if this might be beneficial to you, Lauren, and we hope it will be for those who listen on our channel and on the podcast. But after reviewing hundreds, if not thousands, of criminal cases, FBI profilers came up with a series of formulas that basically taught this principle that we're going to put into a 5-minute review here. And the idea is that victims fit somewhere on a continuum. They're either a low-risk victim or a high-risk victim or somewhere in between. Now, a high-risk victim, for purposes of just chatting about this, would be someone like a transient or a sex trade worker, or somebody who's involved in really high-risk activities. And what we found statistically in those kinds of cases is that when a high-risk victim is perpetrated upon, they are perpetrated upon by someone who's a stranger to them. And this is really an interesting thing. Not only are they a stranger, but what happens is an opportunistic kind of an assault where maybe a serial killer truck driver comes across someone broken down on a highway and picks them up to give them a ride. And they take the individual, and because of the circumstances, they immediately have access to them. On the other end, the low end of the continuum, we have someone like a Suzanne Morphew, who we believe it would be a low-risk victim in her day-to-day kinds of activities. And what we find by looking at low-risk victims is that they are perpetrated upon by someone who's known to them. And the thing that gets really kind of frightening about this is they actually are targets of that aggression. And so we have to start thinking about, where does Suzanne fit on this risk continuum? And if we're accurate on placing her on the continuum, who most probably would be the kind of person that would offend against her? And all of that is contingent on 3 things: this circumstance, situation, and environment. And to maybe kind of draw that out and bring this to a close, the idea would be that Suzanne, when she's at home or when she's with her friends at church or she's going to the grocery store, is really living a low-risk lifestyle. And so if she were injured in her home, for instance, we would really look seriously at people that are known to her and the fact that she would be targeted. But as soon as she gets on that bike, for instance, if she in fact did ride that bike and starts to go for a ride, the circumstances, the environment, everything else starts to change. And we can see this individual, who otherwise would be a low-risk person, start to become high risk based on influences in the environment. Someone driving by on Highway 50 or crashing into the bottom of that canyon and crawling the wrong direction and ending up in a river or something else. We can see how her environment would really impact and change things. So with that, we'll just kind of chat a little bit about that. But what does that make you think of when you kind of look at it in that way?
That's really interesting. I've never looked at it that way. It makes sense. That makes a lot of sense.
It's really kind of a fun thing, because if people would take and apply this really rudimentary kind of methodology to looking at crime, they could start to theorize, and which is always dangerous to theorize. And if you remember Sherlock Holmes, he always taught us, don't base or make your theories immediately. Gather facts first. Otherwise, you spend all your time twisting facts to try to fit your theory. But I don't know, Chris?
Well, and that's why it's critical right now. I mean, Mike and I have been following you, and the piece you just did about, her life, right? That would be, we would call that a victimology of sort, right? Where you laid out, what are her habits? Who are her friends? And this is why in an investigation aspect of it, when, we talk to, as an investigator, we talk to a profiler and they say, hey, look, here's A, B, C, and D, environment, situation, circumstance. And then we start seeing that continuum. What that continuum becomes almost fluid based on the investigative pieces that start coming in. And we start narrowing that down in relationship to talking to witnesses, family members. And then from there, that's where you get into the why versus the how.
Mm-hmm.
And these are the investigative steps that right now, we're into the, okay, well, why is that bike down at the bottom of the ravine?
Mm-hmm.
Why is this witness hearing equipment at, 11, 12 o'clock at night, right? In the evening? Why did that concrete, get poured at that time? Why did they dig it up? Mm-hmm. And so these are all pieces of the puzzle, that start coming together. So I don't know, Mike, what?
Oh, no. So Lauren, as you think about that continuum and all the stuff you have been uncovering, what are your kind of thoughts and comments?
I think it's super important to find out, who last saw her, who last talked to her, and what that conversation was about. Law enforcement hasn't disclosed to us, who last saw her and when and what was being said. So that's really difficult. And that's something that I've been trying to figure out as well. I had learned just recently that Scott, the bicycle mechanic, if you call him, that Tyson was talking about with you guys, I've learned since then that he worked on her bike and saw her on Thursday, May 7th. So just a few days before Mother's Day. As far as what they talked about, possibly if Suzanne might have talked to Scott about where she was going to go on a bike ride or, information like that, that's super important for the investigation. I'm trying to still get an interview with Scott. I would love to speak with him more about, what was wrong with her bike and, what
really
did she last
question.
say, to him. I think that's huge. And I'm sure that law enforcement has already spoken with him as well.
Yeah.
So just out of curiosity, what are some of the things that you found that you feel comfortable sharing with us that you haven't been able to share so far on, your reporting?
Yeah. So when I was trying to figure out, who stayed in those properties that are closest to the Morphew home, I learned that the rental properties, because of COVID and the pandemic, that they had no one staying in those rental properties from March 15th and until June. But they did tell me that the Morphews stayed near their property in one of those rental vacation homes when their property was under investigation. And that is pretty close to their own property. So I learned that. That's something I didn't share with in my story. I also
That's
learned,
huge because that takes us away from the boogeyman in the neighborhood that's staying just in a rental property. Now,
Yeah.
it still could be someone that wanders through or travels through doing construction work, but that gets rid of something that a lot of people have speculated on.
and it
That's
also,
really
like,
powerful.
if she would have been abducted, if she would have screamed or if she would have, hollered out, there was no one around except for that one neighbor up on the hill that's pretty far away. And I want people to also realize that creek that's right there, it's pretty loud. There was high waters, I believe, because it's really loud over there. And another person talked to me about how when she was putting the ribbon along that road to the Morphew property, she was putting on the ribbon and all of a sudden she hears this guy behind her say, "Wow, beautiful." And she didn't know if that man was talking about the ribbons and how beautiful the ribbons were, or if they were talking about her. And that kind of
that's
alarmed
creepy.
her and creeped her out so much that she left, is what she told me. And so because of the river, and because it's so remote and there's so many trees around, it's hard to hear cars coming by. And I also, we both agreed, the woman and I that I spoke to, we both agreed about how there were a lot of out-of-staters because of Foose's Reservoir, that people go up there and fly fish and do fishing up there, that go by that area. And you can hardly hear, if you're right by the creek or whatever, you can't hear those cars sometimes. And so that was something I also agreed with, that you can't hear a lot of passing cars and things. And this woman who also put up the ribbons, she told me that she's seen Suzanne on a bike and she had her earbuds in. And so even adding that to, if she's, riding her bike, not being able to hear someone coming up behind her or something like that, is also really telling as well.
Yeah. So are you confident that someone saw her riding her bike that Mother's Day morning?
No, I still have not heard of a single person that saw her riding a bike that day. And the woman who put up the ribbons actually near where the bike has supposedly tumbled off the road, we both agreed we didn't see any other branches that it had broken, like someone had fallen, or it looked
so no
like
physical evidence to support that an accident occurred there.
Not that I could see, and not what this other woman who put up the ribbons could see either. So
that's really significant too.
Yeah, that would go into the column of is it possible? Sure. Is it probable? We're going to need more evidence, pointing to that.
And when I was out there, Tyson spoke about this too to you guys, about how there's a lot of you're on surveillance camera postings and signs around that area. And I mean, one of those, if she was really on a bike ride, would have picked her up, I think, if she was on a bike ride. But of course, law enforcement hasn't sent out any video camera or video surveillance of that day or even days prior. So we still don't know exactly who last saw her.
So are you even able to confirm or deny the existence of video in any of the homes in the area? Is there anything you've heard?
I've heard that deputies have searched and looked at video. As far as what's on those videos, I don't know. I have no idea.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I think I still lean towards the compression of the investigation that, Mike, is, we know we have to leave that street first, right? And right now we don't have any evidence that tells us that street, that the investigation left that street. In fact, we have evidence that says the investigation went back to that street when they did search warrants, and additional search warrants. So talk to us a little bit about your feelings on the search warrants now.
Well, I was going to ask you guys, I mean, I learned from CBI that the second search at the property on July 9th was a warrant, and it was sealed. And I just wanted to ask you guys, I've been speaking to a lot of other detectives and things like that, but how difficult is it for investigators to get a second search warrant at the same property they had left 41 days prior to?
Mike?
Yeah. Taking a second dip out of the well is next to impossible. They had to have had something really powerful to compel a judge to say, yes, we're going to allow you to go back in and do more. It certainly wasn't based on evidence they had the first time around, because they already had their I'll use another little cute term. They already had a bite at the apple, and so that's huge. That there's something compelling to take them back. It's hard to get a search warrant the first time, let alone the second time.
Yeah, totally agree. They're in the vein. There's something there.
Can you talk more as far as, how would they have, what piece of evidence or how would they have convinced a judge to let them go back in? What would they have had to have or show to the judge? We've got to go back in the home.
I don't know what they had or didn't have, but
yeah, I don't even know.
They had something, Lauren.
Yeah, exactly. It's, you have to, remember, you have to have probable cause. Okay. Probable cause means you have to have a reasonable suspicion that, there's been a criminal activity of some sort, or you're searching for evidence that can prove additional links within inside of that criminal investigation. So it has to be compelling enough to when the judge looks at this, because there's an affidavit that's filled out right by the investigating officer. And that investigating officer goes in front of the judge and says, Your Honor, yeah, here's what we have. Okay. And I've been in courtrooms where, sitting in chambers with judge, and they just look over and go, Are you serious? Like, we're trying, Your Honor. And he goes, No, go get more. Or she goes, Go get more. But once they sign off, remember that judge says, No, I agree with the investigators here. So you go back and see if you can find something else. So yeah, there's something there. It's going to be interesting to see. And the fact that it was sealed means they don't want anybody else to know about it yet. Not yet.
Hey, Lauren, I got a question for you. Could you see the location where the bike was recovered from Morphew's front porch?
No.
Could you see it from their upstairs bedroom?
I don't think so. The trees, I mean, I haven't been in their home, but the trees are so close together in that area near the creek. And I mean, the cliff or the road where the bike had fallen, or however the bike had gotten in next to that tree, is just really up close against the hill. And I don't think at all that whoever was at the house would have seen the bike from their front porch or anything like that.
Okay, thank you.
I mean, you can't even see from the Morphew's home. You can't even see your neighbors. They're kind of, the Morphew property is kind of down a hill, down a slope. And even up the slope, when it gets level, you can see the properties, but they're still quite a far distance from their, front driveway.
Yeah, interesting.
So
That's going to be another one of those nuggets, right, Mike? I mean, we've got now, we're going into a very stressful time for the family, right? I mean, you've got the daughters who are they also know that mom and dad's anniversary is coming up, right? So let's see how those dynamics start to play out. If, there's a lot more stress on the kids to dad and to dad to the kids. This is typically one of those times where, and Mike, tap on the pressure, how it starts to build, right? And it starts to get to this place where you have all of this emotion really now starts taking over. And we start seeing some dynamics potentially of, some of the human side of individuals as they may or may not realize, holy smokes, this is real even further, and or I need to make another play here.
Yeah, exactly. Lauren, have you been able to validate this question that's evolving around a food order, either a single food order or multiple food orders, where Barry or apparently Suzanne picked up food in and around that time?
Yeah, so I've heard about the Cambodia restaurant. A woman had said, "Oh, yeah, Suzanne had picked up an order on that Mother's Day." I found out that that was not true. It was a different Suzanne, not Suzanne Morphew. I'm
That's
also
really
still,
huge to validate that.
That's good.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's
uh, I'm still trying to learn as far as, another restaurant. I'm still trying to get information from that restaurant as far as what day she picked up an order, and if she spoke with someone, and if they have video of her. I'm still trying to get that information, and I'm not ready yet to disclose that restaurant or anything yet. So
All right. So even if we turn our lamp up even brighter, you're not going to give anything up. We lost your video, by the
oh
way,
no,
Lauren.
I don't know how to.
Maybe just in the little box down there, you should be able to click
Uh-oh.
on the little gear box and just make sure your video's up.
Oh, there it
There we
goes.
go.
Sorry.
No, so I guess one thing that would be nice, let's put up how people can contact you, because we would love to have you forward some ideas and things to Lauren so that she can continue to investigate and obviously share with law enforcement things that you think are critical to this case. But Lauren, how can they best get a hold of you?
Yeah, Twitter, Facebook Messenger is the easiest probably, and it's on the bottom of your screen. It's just Lauren Scharf TV is the quickest way to get a hold of me. And obviously, if you have a tip for investigators, call the tip line as well. And if someone gives me information that I think is something they need to tell investigators, I definitely tell them to call the CBI tip line for Suzanne. And if I do have any updates as far as a story that I'm working on, it will be on fox21news.com. And it's typically in the 9 p.m. show. And whatever I do on air will be on our website, which is right there, fox21news.com. So
That's awesome. Lauren, Chris and I have a really strong opinion about what we believe is the sheriff's office is working really hard to solve this case. And we think things are going to bubble to the surface pretty quickly here. But what are your thoughts?
I definitely think this is their top priority right now. I think they're working on it every single day. I think they are following every single tip. They're making sure that they don't miss something. I think they're, with that 600 plus tips that they've gotten, I think that they're, making sure each tip is it's validated, and they make sure that they don't miss anything and follow up on any of those tips. So, I would really I think a lot of the people that I spoke to in Salida and Maysville, they were, wanting to hear more from the sheriff. And I really hope that in the coming weeks that he will do another press conference. He's only done one, and that was after the Highway 50 was closed down and they had done a grid search early on in the investigation. And I think the people in that area would like to see his face and like to hear what he has to say about. I know that they keep sending press releases with quotes and things like that and statements from the sheriff, but I think it would benefit just everyone's safety and their well-being as far as living in that community to know that they are really working on this case, and it isn't going to go cold because of their hard work.
We do like to hear from our leaders. It is calming and reassuring. I would agree with that, Chris.
Yeah, no, I think we're all in agreement here that this is a very meticulous investigation. It's not their first rodeo. They are doing everything right on target. But I would like to offer an invitation, though, for you, Lauren. and Barry. Come on our show. We'd like to talk to you. We'd like to ask you, how Suzanne's doing. It would be real interesting for you to talk about your family with us. It's a safe environment. And we're hoping you take us up on this invitation today. Come talk to us.
That's awesome. Hey, Lauren, would you stay on long enough so I can introduce you to another Lauren real quickly?
Yeah.
Let me pull up a slide here. We talked about a woman named Lauren Demolo who disappeared a few weeks ago in Cape Coral, Florida. And this is a 29-year-old mother of one who, in a weird circumstance, potentially walked away with some friends, perhaps even in pursuit of illegal narcotics, but has never returned home. And we just wanted to, because we talked about this and we talked about how the dark web is available to law enforcement so that they can lean upon this team that helps explore the dark web and share information on missing people. We wanted to let folks know that we haven't forgotten about Lauren Demolo either. We've reached out to folks from the Demolo family. They haven't responded. Maybe you have a friend at the Fox affiliate in Cape Coral that would be interested in doing something similar. But if we can spotlight her case as well. We picked it out because it was recent at the time we were talking about the dark web, but we wanted to just remind people that she still hasn't been found either. And there's an interesting thing that happens between somebody who maybe has a little less going for them and a Suzanne Morphew and the attention some of these cases get. And all of these people deserve to come home. So any thoughts on that? Just hearing this little bit?
I mean, there's so many missing people out there. And, no matter if you think a tip is, or you've heard something or you saw something that might be nothing to you, it might mean a lot to, her family, and it might mean a lot to the investigators, and it might, lead to a bigger tip, and that would break the case. And so I think if you have any information about either one of these missing women, please come forward.
That's really kind of you. You're right. It literally is hundreds of thousands of people that disappear and are never heard from again. And I can't imagine what the lives of the family members that are impacted by this are. Let me just see if you got anything you want to say as we wrap up, Lauren. It's just such a pleasure for us to always have you on.
Well, thanks for having me. I did have a question for both of you. With all the cases that you guys have covered, when Barry did come out and say that the reward was over $200,000, with other cases that you've worked on, I think that's a huge amount of money. Is that something you guys have heard about, like other cases? Does that help an investigation with the higher the reward is, the more tips they get in? Can you talk more about just reward money, and is that helpful during missing person cases?
Yeah, I'll let you take that, Chris, but I'll just say, isn't it interesting? Lauren Demolo has an $8,000 reward.
I noticed that, yeah.
And we have a $200,000+ for Suzanne. But Chris, please take that one.
Yeah, I think, the rewards are always important. I think, the value of that number really obviously depends on the resources, but you would sense that if you have such a high number such as this, I've never had a case where, it had a, $200,000 reward on it. And I've worked some pretty interesting cases. So you would think that would motivate some people. Absolutely, it does motivate people. But simultaneously, you also get the other side of the environment that shows up, and you end up having to assign resources just to kind of spin some of that information off that's really not credible at certain points. So it has pluses and minuses.
Yeah. Chris, anything to wrap up? Oh, Lauren, you have more questions? We'll put the
Well,
light on Chris here for a minute.
I
Put the spotlight
I
on.
understand, the reward is also huge, and then they had this GoFundMe page as well. And then the plea from Barry was like, safe return, no questions asked. My also interest is, what about even finding the person who, who just for justice for Suzanne, as far as, whoever is responsible for her going missing. I think that's important too, as far as, helping investigators find that person. I think that needs to be noted as well. And that hasn't been said, I don't think, enough, as far as, getting, getting whoever did this to Suzanne, whoever, was the last person to see her alive, would be great to know, and just to understand, more into what happened to Suzanne.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think to your point, exactly, Lauren, one of the critical pieces of evidence that we have right now is from Barry himself, right? That conversation is critical. But remember, he talked in plural: we, us, them, cats, and so before you can leave the house, you have to eliminate the house. That is investigations 101. And it just seems in this particular investigation, and that's why, we extend, an opportunity, we're a neutral party. I mean, Mike and I and yourself, you could be on, you could even set it up. We'd love to, sit on the wall with you during that conversation. But at the same time, an invitation stands, and let's see if maybe he'll take us up on it, and that will put a lot of things to sleep, right? Because at that point you can actually talk to somebody and say, hey, this is what I was thinking, or this is what I was doing, and it takes all this speculation out of the window. And we're not sworn anymore, so anything he tells us is in the public forum, right? So it's we're good to go. But anyway, don't lose focus on that yet. Okay, don't leave the house yet until it's been eliminated. And once it's eliminated, because Mike has Suzanne on that victim continuum for a reason. And the first thing I would do as an investigator is ask Mike as a profiler, hey, do I need to start jumping over here yet? And the first thing he's going to tell me is what, Mike? What are you going to say?
Yeah, you got to know who the victim is. And you got to, I think Chris said it best. You can't leave the house until you know that she left the house.
Yeah, exactly.
That's a weird deal. These things are so fascinating. We have taken a lot of your time and people that are listening's time, Lauren. We cannot thank you enough. This is compelling. I think it's important. It also teaches to those of us that are listening and kind of piecing this together. It also teaches us how to reduce our own level of victimization when we think about what circumstances and situations and environments can do to us. Once we leave our homes, we can all be much wiser in our interactions with others. We can still go out and enjoy and embrace life and have a blast and do all the kinds of things and be active and ride our bikes. It just gives us really cause to think about how do we do things, and can we do them more smartly than perhaps sometimes it happens. And in closing, we'll say something that we say a lot, and that is, if anyone out there is feeling victimized or frightened, get to a place of safety and then call your local law enforcement agency or your medical or mental health provider and get some help. Do not stay in these situations. They don't get better. They don't get better. You got to fix them, and bring them to light is the way that you fix things. And we just wish you all the very best. Lauren, thank you so much. Chris, I don't know what I'd do on this thing without you. and your
Mike, I
wisdom
love you,
and
buddy.
expertise. It's just it's a blast every time we do it. And Lauren, can we maybe get some secret information in a week or so again?
Yeah. Call me up in a week.
All right. Great. And if you do have a colleague at Fox in Cape Coral, we'd love to talk to somebody on the ground and see what we can do to help there. But thanks so much, everyone, and have a
don't forget to subscribe and ring that bell for us. We're grateful. We're very grateful.
Yeah.
This channel. What did we hit? We
passed
growing,
5,000
so
this weekend, Lauren.
Wow.
Wow! Congratulations. That's awesome.
Yeah, we're growing, and people are just helping us along the way, and we're getting so much advice, and we're getting great support from other groups. How can I go without shouting out to Linda at It's a Crime and Paula?
She's amazing.
Wonder,
amazing.
Duty Ron. I mean, we're just having so much fun, and we're making new friends. And having become friends with you has been one of the choice experiences. So thank you so much. And
keep it up, Lauren. You're awesome. You're
Thanks
really
for having
good.
me on.
Thank you. Okay.
Bye-bye.